The fundamental flaws in the approach that we've all taken over the last 100 years since Dr. Alzheimer first told us about this, attempting to treat without determining the cause, assuming that mediators or even biomarkers are the causes. So we say, oh, amyloid causes Alzheimer's. No, it's a mediator of Alzheimer's. It doesn't cause the Alzheimer's disease, but it's important to understand what it does. Assuming that a single, why do we keep saying, okay, we're looking for that drug? Well, maybe that's not the optimal way to go. Collecting tiny pathophysiologically irrelevant data sets. We want to know what's actually driving this problem. Root cause medicine, as we've been hearing, constraining clinical trials to monotherapeutics rather than programs. So we proposed back in 2011 the first programmatic approach to pre-Alzheimer's, MCI, and of course it was turned down by the IRB, and the IRBs, but this was in Australia, both the public and private, said, obviously you guys don't know how to do a clinical trial because you're trying to change more than one variable. And we said, obviously you guys don't understand Alzheimer's disease because it's not a one variable disease, as we've just been hearing. And then impersonalized therapeutics. Whoever said that each person should be treated exactly the same way? That doesn't work for any of these complex chronic illnesses. And then failing to iterate. So you treat them and then you just stay on that same thing. Life is more complicated. Maybe you have phase 1, phase 2, you continue to tweak, you continue to optimize. That's certainly the way you deal with your life. Why not with these complex chronic illnesses? And then applying the same rules to untreatable diseases that are applied to diseases with existing effective treatments. This is one that drives me absolutely crazy. So people say, well, you know, there are all these things that you should be doing because you want to compare this to what's currently available. Well, wait a minute. If you've got a disease where everybody dies, the rules change. You have compassionate use. You're saying, look, anything we can do, this is an emergency. Anything we can do to make people better is better than nothing. People will say, well, you know, that's just anecdotal. Yeah, you know, as one person said, you know, I don't care that I'm not statistically significant. I'm significant to my family. Okay, so this is different when you've got something that's untreatable. We want to pull out all the stops. And then assuming that there's a single cause for a single disease. And so, as you know, Cook's postulates, things are changing. When you look at TB, it always comes from TB. But when you look at Alzheimer's, there are many different things that contribute. Same with cancer, same with cardiovascular disease. It's not always the French fries when it comes to cardiovascular disease. It's different things for different people. And guess what? They add together to give you the syndrome that you call, in this case, Alzheimer's disease. And so we initially identified 36 different things. So ignoring the fundamental causes of disease. So we want to keep on asking why, and going upstream, just as we were hearing from Dr. Lombard just a few minutes ago. We want to go upstream. Why did this happen? And as we were hearing earlier with the inflammatory part, why? Ultimately, we want to know the fundamentals. Are there toxins involved? Are there pathogens involved? Is there a change in metabolism? Are genetics involved? And is there trauma, physical or psychological, or both? Those are the things that are the upstream mediators. We want to know what are we exposed to? What's actually driving this process? Just saying it's A beta doesn't tell us why. Why is the A beta there? What's actually happening? And if it's inflammation, as we heard about before lunch, what's causing the inflammation? So as you know, it's a really sad state of affairs right now for Alzheimer's. It's just, it's almost embarrassing and very depressing. So the patients, as you know, they don't seek care. They know there's nothing that can be done, so they don't go in. They wait the longer. And so, but when you finally hear about this, things are, you know, very late. And we want the opposite. We want people to come in as early as possible. When they do finally go into their primary care person, the primary care person says, hey, I don't need a neurologist. I can write a prescription for Aricept. That's all that can be done. So why would I need anything more? So they often don't get a diagnosis. They don't get the appropriate workup. And then finally, as they progress, now they're going to go to the university center. And the university center is going to tell them, number one, I'm going to take away your driver's license. Number two, I'm going to make it so you cannot get any long-term care insurance. And we hear this story all the time. And number three, look, I can't help you at all. But could you come back every 6 months so I can do a spinal tap and renew my grant? And that is how bad things are today. And that's where this group has to change that. That's where integrative physicians need to change that. The complexity of the problem is here, and the complexity of what we check, serum sodium, serum potassium, is down here. There's this massive gap. An engineer would be laughing at us, saying, what are you doing? You're taking this incredibly complex problem, and you're using this tiny little data set, and then you're saying, yeah, we don't know what causes it, we don't know what to do about it. Well, no surprise. So we need to begin to close that, and of course, that's what functional medicine is doing. And if you look at the approach, it's really interesting. The current standard is, it's one cause, we don't know what it is, it's one disease, and we're looking for a monotherapy treatment. But the research suggests something very different. We find many different contributors to this problem. Initially, we identified 36. There are some more. It's going to be fewer than 100. There are many from epidemiology. There are many SNPs. We heard about several of them. So if we look at the subtypes, we can see 6 different subtypes of this disease. Not a surprise. It's a complex chronic illness. And of course, most people have multiple pieces here, but they often have one that's dominant, whether it's inflammatory, whether it's atrophic, what have you. And then, therefore, there are many treatments, and this is a personalized program for each person. The other thing that's really interesting to me is when we look at the major illnesses that are taking our lives, we expect for, we're used to, in coronary artery disease, if you go in for a CABG bypass, you're going to spend somewhere around $150,000, give or take. It's somewhere between 70 and 200. Now, you're not going to spend that. It's going to be supported, of course, reimbursed. If you go in for chemotherapy, it's incredibly expensive. Again, reimbursed. When you go in for Alzheimer's treatment, you get a drug that costs very little. And if you try to do anything else, it won't be reimbursed. If you actually try to address the illness itself, it's typically not reimbursed. So why do we think that we're telling people there's nothing you can do, but we really aren't trying? And then exposure to toxins, such as divalent metals. One of the best binders we know, extremely tight binding to copper, for example, is amyloid. So divalent metals such as mercury, biotoxins, such as mica. People, imagine that you have a roof with 36 holes in it. A drug is going to be a really good patch for one hole, but you need more than that. So if you had the perfect Alzheimer's drug, here's what it would do.
You know, he started off talking about how we need to understand the root cause and attack the root cause, but now he's talking about symptom-based medicine again. Interesting.